Hey, welcome back to No Hype Beer Reviews. Unless it's your first time, then welcome. Please consider subscribing. If you do, hit the notification bell, get all the updates. That's it for today's video. So I'm going to talk about the brewery tour I did at Russian River, and I have some video clips and stuff that I'll put over. And then afterwards, just talk a little bit more holistically about my recent trip to California, the Santa Rosa area of California. So again, I'll just start with, so people just want to see the Russian River tour stuff. We'll do that first, and then I'll just kind of quickly recap my whole trip. It was just 4 nights, so it'll be a relatively quick recap. So my friend Jim, who I went to visit, him and his family, booked the tour for noon. So we got there, and they gave us a Tiku. I think it's like an 8-ounce one, and you'll see it in one of the pictures I'll put up. And we started our tour. Or actually, no, they didn't give us the glass at first. We went into the first room where all the mash tuns and everything are, and then the tour guide, who was excellent, I forget his name and I apologize, he was very good. And that's where the Tikus were, and he filled it with that Pilsner. It's 3-letter, like OTS, STS, something like that. And I hadn't had that in a long time, and it was so good. Like, just smelling it, just initially smelling it, I was like, oh, this, you can just tell it was gonna taste good. It was like one of those, and then you tasted it, it was like, yeah, this is awesome. So at that point, he's talking about the history of the brewery, when Vinny and his wife first branched out and started their own brewery versus working for someone else, how they had the blind pig. The tour guy goes, anyone know what a blind pig is? So I raised my hand. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's during Prohibition. It's another name for speakeasies. He's like, oh no, it's a pig who can't see. I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe I fell for that nonsense. After that room, we went upstairs. So that was like ground level. Went up this. It reminded me of, if you've ever seen Breaking Bad, where they had the huge facility. It was like that. Like, then we went up these big stairs and the catwalk. So it was cool, like looking down from up there. And then we, just kind of kept progressing into the different sections where the beer then gets moved to. Where it ferments, and then and then we end up in packaging. And at packaging, it was amazing to see their scale. Like, I knew it was a bigger, like, this was their new brewery in Windsor. I should have been specific for people who haven't been. So you can do a brewery tour there. And I knew it was big, but seeing it in person, it was actually much larger than I thought it was going to be. And we lucked out where they were packaging at that time. They're brewing and packaging, so we really got to see everything. And at the time, they were packaging Pliny, which obviously makes sense. My friend Jim asked the tour guide, like, "Is that the beer you brew the most?" He's like, "Yeah, that is the one that we most, the one we brew the most." So that's also what we sampled next. We're out of the bottle, Pliny the Elders, 2 hours old. If you didn't see my Instagram story about it, 2 hours old. So the freshest I'll ever have, obviously. Like, it's almost impossible to get any fresher than that, but they happen to be packaging it, so you just grab 4 or 5, whatever, off of the line, and then we were able to try them. And he's talking some more about that process and everything. I showed a video about that, and about all the packaging stuff. And there was a little bit more Pliny left at the end. He's like, anyone? So a couple of us, myself very much included, were like, yeah, I'm not shy. I'll definitely take more of this. So then we went into where they do their barrel aging, their sours, everything. Oh my God. Walked in. It hit me about a second before it hit Jim, because he saw me react, and then he was a little puzzled, inquisitive, and then he noticed it, and he's like, oh yeah, you beat me on that. It smelled so good in there. So you went from the typical brewery, almost like Cheerio kind of smell, to the oak, the most pleasant sour note aromas, fruitiness. It just, this enormous space smelled so good. And then once I kind of got used to I don't know if you ever light a scented candle. It's not like you're mindful of it, for the whole hour it's burning or whatever, right? So once I kind of got used to it, I'm like, man, it just smells. It wasn't like every time I was inhaling, I was like, oh, it smells great again. Oh, it smells great again, which did happen initially. We approached this door. It looked like a door from an abbey, and that was the point. And of all places, they found it on eBay. It's really cool, and I might have something overlaying when I'm talking, as I'm talking right now, that shows it. So we went into this room that had their open open fermenter, and really cool process. They literally just put the beer in there, they open the windows, get everything in, and the room is made of wood, and they didn't sand the wood, they didn't treat the wood with stain or anything, it's just the normal wood, and they're hoping, not even hoping, it's what's going to happen, that the bacteria and stuff will just keep sticking to the walls, so it'll keep like concentrating what's in there when they do these open fermentations. It's a beautiful space, like just, I mean, it's absolutely beautiful space. But also like really cool to see the practicality of it as well. And that wood was South Carolina oak, donated by the Sierra Nevada brewery there, or is it North Carolina, whichever Carolina they're in. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. It was gifted. And then later we learned that outside some of the wood was gifted from the Sierra Nevada brewery that's just north of Russian River, or they're in Chico, and the Russian River's in Santa Rosa, and then this Windsor location. So like really cool. It's one of my, I've said this before in other videos, it's one of my favorite things about the craft beer industry, and I feel the same way about BeerTube. Like, yeah, it's a competition for dollars, it's a competition for views to some degree, but also there's collaboration, there's friendships, there's, you know, like people shouting out other people, all that stuff, helping each other out. You know, this microphone Matt from Massive Beer Review sent me. You know, he's like, I'm sick of you not having a microphone in your videos. I have one, I'll just send it to you. You know, like there's like cool stuff like that exists in both spaces, which I love. So then when we left that room, we had to go back out into the space that had the barrels. So it had been enough time where I again was like, oh my God, it smells so good in this room. It was awesome. So at that point, we slowly made our way back. It was kind of like the self-guided tour part. Our tour guide was still with us if we had questions. They had some cool pictures. They had a picture of the ship that had all their tanks coming from Germany. I think it must have been those tanks going under the Golden Gate Bridge, or it was something from their brewery going under the Golden Gate Bridge. Because of the location of that brewery to the Santa Rosa airport, it was as tall as it could be. I want to say 50 feet is what they said. So that's kind of like interesting, like, oh wow, you know, how they had to make all the specs. And they were telling me, or my friend Jim was telling me, I think the tour guide might have mentioned it too, a lot of permits and regulations and stuff they had to really factor in to be able to make that space, and that was one of them that I wouldn't have anticipated and thought about. So that was really cool. So at that point, we were done, and I had reached out to Billy, and if you guys look at the comment sections, Billy's a very active commenter, and he sends a lot of beer, so I review a lot of beer. I'm like, hey, thanks, Billy, you know. So he lives north of Russian River, so I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, man, I'm going to be at Russian River if you're interested to come down for lunch. We're doing a noon tour. If you want to do the tour, you can sign up if there's still spots, or we're going to eat lunch at 1 after the tour. So he's like, yeah, I'll come down and we'll do lunch at 1. He's retired, so he's like, yeah, that's one of the nice things about being retired. It's pretty easy to make plans last minute. So he came down with his mom. We had just a lovely, lovely lunch. We at first we had to wait for a table, so we went and had a beer, and I got a full pour of Pliny the Elder. Of course, they had a bunch of awesome sounding stuff. I'm like, I want more of that beer. So I got a full pour of that. And it's so good, draft, you know, bottle, it doesn't matter, that beer is awesome. And we were sitting outside, and then our table was ready, so we went inside, and when I finished the Pliny, I ordered a half pour of Blind Pig, which also was delicious. Food was very, very good. It was great meeting Billy, it was great talking to him. You know, it's I've talked about this on camera before, like, I have a bunch of friends I met in real life, and then a bunch of friends I met on the internet, which is less stigmatized now. But you know, initially, you know, it's like, oh, you met someone on the internet. It's like, yeah, but like a lot of people. One of my favorite stories was it was the night before my 40th birthday, and my wife, the guys from Nerd Sense, let's see, Ross and his then fiance were here. I think that was it. We went out to dinner, and it dawned on my wife. She's like, oh, like, you met all these people on the internet. I'm like, honey, I met everyone at this table on the internet because you and I met on Match. So like, you know, we got a big laugh. Like, yeah, like I've met people on the internet. But here's why I'm bringing it up. I have, 1,000 batting average. I don't know. I'm not a sports guy. Whatever I'm trying to say. I have a 100% on meeting people in person who have been cool, which I'm really fortunate for, and Billy was no exception. We had such a good time. We hung out, I don't know, what was it, maybe 2 hours? 2 hours of hanging out. His mom is 94 years old, and she was eating French fries, chicken wings, and drinking, it was either a stout or a porter. So everyone, apparently that's the key to longevity, is chicken wings, French fries, and dark beers. Just the sweetest, cutest old lady. So sweet, put together, reminded me of she was like a nice version of my great grandmother, who was not a nice person but was always put together, and totally had that vibe. Just a lovely, lovely person. She was, and then she raised a lovely man in Billy. Anyway, Billy, you're probably watching. Great to meet you, dude. I'm glad we got to hang out. That was awesome. All right, so just quick recap of some of the other stuff when I was in California. So Jim picked me up at the San Francisco airport. I won't go over flight stuff. I'll keep it a little bit more beer-centric. And he doesn't live too far from Lagunitas. It's kind of on the way. So we stopped at Lagunitas, and we both did flights. I went with 3 very low alcohol beers, and then their 2024 Willetize. And then I forget what we had. At least one of the first 3 I picked the same as him, and then they had the 2023 Willetize, so he ended with that one also, so we could compare the two, which was really cool. And we also ate there and had a nice meal. And then then the next day was when we went to Russian River. And then once we finished Russian River, Billy's mom wanted to get to their hotel, so they didn't go out with us. To the next place, we went to a Belgian place, which of course I'm forgetting the name. They make all Belgian style beers. I did a flight there, which was awesome. Between their Abbey double and their triple, I couldn't figure out which one was my favorite, but those 2 were like easily the top, but the other ones were all good. So that was, it was just nice to see a local small place around the corner from Russian River crushing it and just making great beers. We also went to Parliament the last day, a newer brewery by him. Really nice beers. We did an IPA and a double IPA there, and both were excellent. They both had Citra, and then one had Citra and Strata. We went to a tap room by him. They had 3 North Park kegs and a bunch of other awesome stuff, but we went because they had North Park stuff. So we both got that, Hop Fu, West Coast style IPA. That was delicious, and a ton of hops in it. They had like the listing of hops, or no, we found it, or they had maybe most of them listed on their board, and then Jim looked it up on Untapped, and it was like a ton of hops. That beer was awesome. And then he had a Cellar Maker beer at his house. It was 2 different barley wine. It was a blend, 2 different barley wines that were aged in different barrels, and then 20% a stout aged in barrels. It mostly drank like a barley wine with like a little bit of that stout roastiness, a little bit. Really pleasant, super awesome beer. Of course, the name of it is escaping me. But it's funny because on the plane ride out, I was listening to Steal This Beer podcast, their episode with a guy from Cellar Maker. So I was like, oh yeah, just like listen to a podcast with this guy. It'd be totally cool to drink a Cellar Maker beer while I'm out here. Billy had given us, what's that brewery? Out there in it's like you would think oh God, this is embarrassing. Lost Abbey. I kept wanting to say like it's like an Abbey. They make like a lot of Belgian beers. And I hadn't had a Lost Abbey beer in a while. It was a double with raisins. It was delicious. We drank that at Jim's house. He gave us a Blanton's sample. We drank that at Jim's house. That was delicious. And he also gave us a Sierra Nevada Omnipolo collab. It was a double IPA. Jim and I both thought that was also delicious. It was 3 for 3 for sure of those ones. And I think that was it. Then we did like family stuff. Alcohol related, not beer related. Jim's wife works at a winery, so we went to and did an awesome food and wine pairing for lunch the one day. And that was beautiful. Very scenic, and the food, the chef, it was prepared beautifully, looked beautiful, and tasted great. And paired really nicely with the wines. It was very thoughtful pairings. It wasn't just like, here's food with the wine. Like, it really made sense as you drank and ate. Like one thing, like we ended on a port, and they were saying, you never want your dessert to be sweeter than the port. So use, dark chocolate, things like that. And it's like, whoa, as we were doing the pairing, it's like, yeah, that's true. It was good information to log away. But yeah, so I had a great trip. It was great seeing Jim and his family. So I got to do that stuff, which obviously I'm not going to talk much about that. It's personal and his life, but great to see those guys and see them years later and all that. And yeah, try to keep this beer centric, and we did a lot of fun beer stuff. So yeah, I hope I figured out how to put those videos I took and pictures I took above me talking about Russian River, so that was pleasant for you to see. Have you guys ever been? Have you been to Russian River, or the new location, the old location, Santa Rosa, San Francisco, Petaluma area of California? Anything else you want to talk about? Comment section below. Get those conversations going. Once you're done doing that, make sure you check me out on Instagram and Untappd. It's No Hype Beer Reviews, both those places. So please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, I don't have anything to imbibe. Cheers, everyone.